I hope you are doing well.
Well,
Firstly, I want to thank you for joining me. I'm incredibly grateful that you accepted my invitation and for taking the time with me here today.
I'm
Uh,
glad.
it's certainly a great honor to be able to talk to you, and I genuinely hope I'll be able to somehow return the favor in the future. As I've said before, I'm sure this interview will make a lot of your fans in Iran delighted and thrilled. So
Thank.
I greatly appreciate it. In order for the conversation to go more smoothly, I decided to ask my friend Amir Hossein to be our interpreter. So if you allow me from now on, I'll continue in my native language, Persian, and my friend will interpret for you.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so hello, Mrs. Argento. Good afternoon.
Good
This
afternoon.
is the interpreter. I hope you're doing great. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so I guess we can now continue. سوهل جان شما میتونی
Okay.
یعنی
Okay.
معرفی تو ادامه بدید.
Okay. من سهیل عفیفی هستم، 34 ساله، از ایران. کارشناسی ارشد ادبیات دراماتیک دارم و چند سالی رو هم به پژوهش در سینما، به خصوص سینمای هورر پرداختم و کارهای پژوهشی از این دست داشتم و فکر میکنم که زمان اولین کارگردانی من بالاخره بعد از این سالها فرا رسید.
Okay, so before jumping into the questions, I'll take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Sohail Afife. I'm 34 years old, from Iran. I've got a master's degree in dramatic literature, and I've been spending the last several years mostly on research and journalism in the world of movies. But I believe it's now time for me to actually get my hands dirty and start making my first feature film, which I'll talk a little more about at the end of the interview. But for now, if you're ready, we can just jump right into the questions.
Sure, let's go.
Okay.
Great.
Uh,
Finish on soda.
فدریکو فلینی وقتی 8 رو ساخت، بعدش جولیتای اروا رو ساخت و گفتش که من یه 8 زنانه ساختم و بعد از اون هم ما فیلمسازی مثل پیتر گرینوی رو داریم که فیلم 8 زن رو میسازه و حتی اواخر هم راب مارشال فیلم 9 رو بر اساس 8 فدریکو فلینی درست کرده. سوالی که مشخصا من دارم اینه که وقتی که آزیا آرژنتو میخواست فیلم خودش رو، یعنی اسکارلت دیوا رو بسازه، آیا داشت یک 8 آرژنتویی میساخت از جنس آسیا یا نه؟
The first question is Federico Fellini had once said that his film Juliet of the Spirits is like a female version of Eight and a Half. Peter Greenaway has directed the film Eight and a Half Women, and also in recent years, Rob Marshall made a film called Nine, which was also influenced by and based on Fellini's Eight and a Half. And in your film, Scarlet Diva, we basically have an actress that is making her first film about an actress that wants to make her first film. Given all of this, could we say that Scarlet Diva is, in some sense, Asia Argento's Eight and a Half?
That would be a little far-fetched, but I see the parallel. I love movies about directors making movies. Lately, I saw a movie by Abel Ferrara that was made here in Rome called Tommaso, which is about a director trying to make a movie. And there's another Abel Ferrara movie called Dangerous Games with Harvey Keitel and Madonna about a director and his actress. And it's very difficult to tell movies about movies. Most of the time, it's boring unless you work in movies. There's, of course, Nuit Americaine by Truffaut. In English, it's called in Italiano Effetto Notte. In English,
American Nights.
American Nights may also okay. Day for Night. Day for
Day for
Night.
Night. Yes, Day for Night.
Day for Night. And that's, if you work in movies, that's a very specific. But in Scarlet Diva, it's an attempt of somebody attempting to make a movie. We don't see the set. We see at the beginning her as an actress, her not happy being an actress. It's I think everybody's first movie is kind of autobiographical in a way, even though it doesn't have to be, as explicit and as where the lines are so blurred between reality and fiction, like in Scarlet Diva. But it's always like the autobiographical. Fellini said that every movie, every piece of art, it's autobiography. And he said, the pearl is the autobiography of the oyster. So I'll leave you to that.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. میتونیم بریم سوال بعدی سوال.
شما برای خانم آرژنتو بگید که ترجمه رو دیگه من خودم چیزم. حالا من سوال دوم.
بله درست.
زمانی که اسکارلت دیوا رو میساختید چقدر براتون مهم بود که این فیلم جزء اولین فیلم هایی هستش که با تکنولوژی ویدئویی دیجیتال ضبط شده؟ از زاویه‌ای که من اینجا نشستم این یک عمل جسورانه بوده، اما آیا واقعا این مورد براتون اهمیت داشته یا نه؟
When you were making your first film, Scarlet Diva, how much did it matter to you that it was actually one of the first films that were made with digital video technology? Now, from my point of view, it seemed like a kind of a bold and audacious move, if you will. But I'm wondering, did you really care much about that at the time, or like, was it a serious, well thought out decision, or did you see it as a rather trivial matter?
For me, no, I wanted to shoot in film, but I didn't have enough money to do that. And so I remember my uncle, who was with my father, the producer of the movie, and Minerva, they said, there's, and at the time, all the Dogma movies were coming out of Lars von Trier, and then Harmony Korine, and they were all shooting in digital. And my movie was in digital beta, so the camera was pretty big, the tape was pretty big. And they said, look, there's this new way, why don't we try to shoot this? And you can shoot scenes as long as you want, and I thought, and we can make it for cheap. But at the time, you still had to take the digital beta tape and kind of like print frame by frame then on the film so it could be shown, because of course they didn't have digital theaters like today. So the process, when I would see the material coming back in digital beta, I was like, oh my God, it looks so bad. But then once it was put in film, it had that grain that made it like something that the eyes could recognize. So I would love to take the trophy of saying I wanted to shoot in digital, to be the youngest female director in Italy ever to shoot the first movie in digital. But I wanted to go to school. Then, when I understood the medium and how it could work for me, I was really thrilled. But it was something I done because I had only 250,000 euros at time lira, to shoot the movie, and so we strategized to make it as light physically as possible. And because of that, I managed to get, because I was shooting in digital and not in film, I managed to get so many shots that I could never get if I was shooting on film. All the traveling shots, like we went to Los Angeles, Amsterdam, Paris, LA, and just me and the DP. And we shot all the exteriors there. We went traveling, just me and the DP, and the sound man. And it was something that would have been impossible to achieve this movie otherwise. So it was fate, in a way, that brought me to it, to shoot a movie that could have only been shot this way, really.
Great, that's an interesting story. Okay, so we can move on to the next question. So شما میتونید برید سوال بعدی. فقط لبخندم بزن. خیلی ذره
خب من میرم سوال بعدیمو با عزتتون میخونم. سوال بعدیم اینه که بخشای قابل توجهی از فیلم اسکارلت دیوا به نمایش وهم اختصاص داره. علاوه بر این نماهای پیووی مرموزی که در فیلم هستش برام جالبه که اونو به ژانر هارور نزدیک میکنه و مشخصا فکر میکنید چه تفاوت سبکی با این حساب بین کارگردانی شما و پدرتون داریو آرژنتو وجود داره؟
Much of Scarlet Diva is full of nightmare-like hallucination scenes, things like that. There are also some kind of like mysterious, spooky POV scenes as well. I would say this all brings the movie closer to the genre of horror. And also, given that Mr. Argento, your father, is obviously a well-known horror filmmaker, what would you say are the main differences between your style as a director when it comes to depicting horror and your father's style?
Yes, I think that in a way, all my movies are kind of horror, but I deal with the horror of everyday life, and my father deals with the horror in a fantasy, in a more aesthetic way, while mine is always a thin line in between hyper realistic and surreal worlds. I'm I'm deeply inspired by my father's my father's way of filmmaking, observing him. I would, when he would write, what I observed every step of his filmmaking, and it's for sure, he was a huge, and still is a huge mentor for me as far as freedom. And my father used to work with Sergio Leone. He wrote, when he was very young, Once Upon a Time in the West, him and Bertolucci. And I think my father used to be a film critic. He wasn't, really thinking of becoming a filmmaker before that. And I think he learned the lesson of Leone, that through the genre, the Westerns, he could have so much freedom, even though within the confinements of what the genre is, that you can have absolute freedom and be as extreme as you want, as long as you work within his confinements. And it was a great lesson. And I have inherited this urge and this ideal of absolute freedom in filmmaking, and trying to push the envelope, even though remaining in certain contexts of story.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Great. میتونیم بریم سوال بعدی. البته فقط من بذار یه در ترجمه میکنم، چیزی که مثلا ایشون گفتن تا حدی که نظر طبیعیه جلوه کنه. گفتن که مثلا من پدرم بیشتر هورور فانتزی به چیز میکشه، تصویر میکشه، در صورتی که من هورورم ترکیب ریالیسم و ایناست که هنوز تو سوال بعدی فرشون داریم.
اوکی، بیرم سوال چهارم هست. خانم آرژنتو، در فیلم های شما مفهوم سرگردانی به شدت مشهود هست. مثلا طوری که در فیلم وگوباند انیس واردا ما اونجا داشتیم میدیدیم این مفهوم سرگردانی، اونجا بیشتر مسئله جنسیت زنانه است برای خانم اگنس واردا، ولی این سرگردانی که شما در فیلمتون هشدار دهنده و به صورت روزمره و همهگیر نشون میدید، مسیر حرفه‌ای شما و فیلم هایی که در طول این همه سالها ساختید رو مشخصاً به مفهوم سرگردانی پیوند میزنه. سوال اینه، مسیر طولانی شده، چرا اینقدر دیر به دیر فیلم میسازید؟
I've noticed that confusion and wandering of the sort that we see, for example, in Agnes Varda's film Vagabond, seems to be a common theme across the films that you've made. What was interesting to me was that in the three feature films that you've made, unlike Agnes Varda, you did not limit this confusion and wandering to just the women in the films, and instead you've extended it to basically every kind of character in the films. And in a way, you portrayed this confusion as kind of a universal feature of the reality of human life in general, in some sense. First, I'd like to know what you think about this interpretation. Do you agree with it? And also, I'm wondering, why is it that you rarely make films, direct films yourself?
I really love this parallel, and I'm very humbled, of course. Agnes Varda, the huge inspiration, somebody compromising, a true feminist, a true free artist, and but it's a different generation and a different point of view. I make films rarely because in order for me to, first of all, I need to get the idea. and they don't come as easy to me as to some other directors. I always thought, as my movies as a filmmaker, as an actress, I've made many movies that I didn't care so much about, unfortunately, and it was a job to bring the bread home to me and my children, so to speak. But even though I, as an actress, I also worked, and loved my job with many different directors who were great teachers to me, also as a filmmaker. But I think of like my movies as bricks to the palace where I have to live. So these bricks by brick, they have to be very strong. They have to be something to make my home protected, this palace somewhere I love to live in, something that is not shaky, something that I feel comfortable with in this, so to speak, palace. And so, like I said, the ideas sometimes they arrive to me, and it comes every 10 years or so, and then I have to ruminate on them, and then I have to write them, and I know that the stories that come to me, they're very extreme. They're not like mainstream, so it's a very hard thing to make. It becomes an obsession, and I have to live with this obsession until I make the movie. I cannot let it go until I make it, and becomes also a question of really of life or death. If I don't do this, I cannot live, and it's very hard once I have the story to find the finance for the movie. It's never been, easy. But then, I find people crazy enough to have, and I write movies always thinking, if I shoot a movie that is, 1 million maximum, then I can find the money and I can have my freedom as a director. So it's right now, like since 1 year, I've been thinking of the story, and I know it's the right story, and I think I want to write it this summer. And again, it's something very something I've never seen in the movies. That's also I don't want to make a movie that's already been made. So the story that come to me and obsess me, they obsess me because I'm like, I have never seen this movie. I have to make it. It's my movie. And so I've been ruminating about this story for a while, and I know this is going to be even harder than the other stories. But it's like what you were saying at the beginning of your question, that it's also like a nomadic movie, this one too. And I don't know why. Maybe because I am a bit of a nomad myself in my life as an actress in filmmaking. I'm always traveling around the world and seeing new people, knowing people around the world. So it's something, travel, it's a big part of my life, and an outside view of the world, I find it enriches me. And so it may enrich the audience too.
Got it. میگن که آره، حالا شما میتونید در حقیقت سوال بعدی بپرسی. البته من میتونم حالا یکم یه چیزی بگم که فقط خیلی خلاصه جلوه نکنه جملات من. شما میتونید سوال بعدی رو بپرسید.
نه کافیه. من فکر میکنم که من سوال بعدی رو میپرسم. من میرم سوال 5، چون که مواجهه اولیه شما با دکوپاژ. اوکی. خانم آرژنتو، مواجهه اولیه شما با دکوپاژ بسیار برام کنجکاوی برانگیز هستش. فیلم های شما هم تکیه بر نگاه رئالیستی دارن و هم باید هر لحظه منتظر وهم هم باشیم در فیلم های شما. انگار آزی آرژنتو در ضلع مثلث سوم ایستاده که در اون ضلع‌هاش تئودروس آنجلوپولوس و داریو آرژنتو وایسادن. بسیار برام جالب خواهد بود که بدونم در دکوپاژ ابتدا به سراغ اوهام خودتون میرید یا اینکه نه با همون نماهای واقع گرایانه آغاز میکنید.
Your films, and by your films here, I'm referring to the films that you've directed, they have a lot of realism in them, as you yourself mentioned earlier. But in the middle of all that realism, it seems like we should always be expecting or anticipating some hallucination style scenes, and stuff like that. Given this, I think I would say that Asia Argento is in some sense standing somewhere in between Theo Angelopoulos and Dario Argento. That is to say that your style seems to be like a mixture of the two. What I'm really curious about is how you go about doing the decoupage for these films. Do you begin with the hallucinatory style scenes or the realist ones, or what's the process like exactly?
Of the writing, you mean, or shooting?
The storyboarding and
Yeah,
or
I
shooting,
know.
yeah.
I sometimes I do a storyboard. I never draw it because I don't believe my movies are animation. So I write what shots, what I need to cover. In the last movie,
Mhm.
Coppetta, I didn't even do that. I would be inspired, but whatever was happening on the set, I was working with this crane all the time, which I could get, in one shot, the close-ups, the wide, and a different style because I had a different DP, Nicola Pecorini, and I really loved working in tune with him, which was different from my other ways of shooting. As far as the writing, it's dream and reality, to me they're the same. Like, um,
Mhm.
when I go to sleep and I have dreams, it's part of my reality, even though I may not remember them. So maybe life itself is a dream. Maybe I've been dreamed about something, somebody else as I'm talking to you. So there's no limit. It's like also life and death. They're one, and dream and reality, they're one. So when I write, I have these visions, like certain realities. They bring me to certain visions, and so it's always the reality that provokes the dream, and sometimes
Mhm.
dream influences the reality. But
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
one.
Mhm. Gotcha. Excellent. So we can move on to the next question. Sorry, John.
مرسی. در آینده دوست دارید وقتی نام آزی آرژنتو شنیده میشه شما رو بیشتر به عنوان یک کارگردان، در آینده منظورم سالها بعد هست، کارگردان بشناسن شما رو، یا اینکه بیشتر شما رو به عنوان آسی آرژنتوی بازیگر بشناسن؟
Uh, let's say in 20 years, for example, whenever somebody will hear the name Asia Argento, would you like them to primarily know you as an actress or as a filmmaker?
Um,
Primarily.
I, I cannot think this far. For me, I'm a person who lives day by day. And anyway, who knows if I'll be here in 20 years? And if I'll be here, who knows what I will have achieved?
Right.
Of course, I'm more, the movies I've directed are very dear to me because there's something that, look, like I shot Scarlet Diva 23 years ago, 24 years ago, and here I am still talking about it, and proudly so.
Yes.
Like it's a child, it's like my child. So forever I will take care of it, forever I will nurture it, and forever I feel responsible for my child. I have responsibilities toward this child. So um, on my epitaph, maybe there'll be written, "Here lies a woman who did everything but didn't know how to do anything."
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, we can move on to the next question.
Yes. شما سالها قبل در مصاحبه گفتید که فیلمسازی هارور اینطوریه که دیگه نمیشه ازش خارج شد. هنوز هم به همین باور هستید، یا مثلا اینجوریه که آیا میشه از ژانر گنگستری یا کمدی خارج شد؟
In a 2002 interview, you said the following. Once you're stuck in the genre of horror, there's no way out. I thought that was a really interesting remark. Why do you think that's the case? What exactly makes this genre so captivating and special? In other words, what feature does horror have that other genres don't, that makes it so enthralling in a unique way? Like, why is it that you can get out of other genres but not out of horror?
Because horror and especially the horror viewer, the horror fans, it's such a specific and primal fear, is such a primal sensation, emotion. And if you're able, there's a intimate contact between the viewer and the filmmaker. He knows the mathematical moment when the camera moves in and the character has to move at a certain second, not before, not after, so for you to have fear. And you experience this in a room with other people, and it's like almost like a religious experience, but and in a way you're exercising your fears, exercising your demons. I've been to many horror conventions. For instance, they have so many horror conventions when horror fans just go and just want your autograph. They want to shake your hand. Even actors that have played like a small part in a B movie in the 80s are still remembered and cherished by the horror fans. I think because also laughter, of course, is a very primal emotion, but there's nothing like fear, because when you exercise it, then it makes you maybe more courageous in life. And there's this inextricable bond between the filmmaker and the audience. And the audience requires from you for you to keep scaring them for the rest of their lives. And I say this because, like, my father, after he made his first three movies, the trilogy of the animals, of the crystal plumage, the cats of nine tails, and the four flies of gray velvet, then he made kind of political comedy, and nobody went to see it. So he was, young. He was really desperate, and then he came back with a vengeance. He was like, "Okay, I'll scare you, like I scare the hell out of you." And he made Profondo Rosso, which is such a perfect movie of like, exploring the deepest fear. So I think from this moment he understood that he always had a sense of humor in his movies. There's always a bit of comedy, of like dark humor, a sense of humor. So he understood, okay, that's it. I am the king of horror, and I will keep scaring people for the rest of my life.
Yeah, great answer. سوال جان، البته شما گفتن که حالا ترس چون کلا حس بدوی و اینا، حالا اینه که انشالله بعدا ترجمه میکنم. فقط یه خواستم بگم اینه که سوال 9 که قراره بگی آیا آزی آرژنتو چیز میکنه یا نه، کارگردانی میکنه فیلم ترسناک یا نه. خب ایشون قبلش گفتن که من فیلمامو ترسناک میدونم مثلا. یعنی میخوای سوال 10 سوال بعدی رو بپرسم؟
سوال میخوام بپرسم ولی مشخصا منظورم هارور هستش. من الان سوال 8 رو میپرسم با اجازت، همون رو با این حساب. آیا ممکنه که آزی آرژنتو همین چیزی که گفتن مشخصا بره به سمت ژانری که الان ژانرش بیشتر فیلماش اجتماعی هستن، ممکنه بره هارور بسازه یه روز یا نه؟
Will Asia Argento ever direct a horror film? I mean, Sohail considers your films more toward like other genres, like they're more society related. They're they depict social problems, etc. And so I don't know if you yourself consider your own movies to be horror movies, but the question, as he said it, is, will Asia Argento ever direct a horror film?
It's my movies, like, I wouldn't know what genre they are really. I like the idea of them being like a social commentary, but I don't know how to label them, and I'm very proud of that. I have a deep obsession, for instance, on serial killers, and I've studied them. I'm interested, in the human mind and what goes wrong in the development of the brain, where you lack the capacity of having empathy and this kind of repetition of in the bringing up of a child. How does he turn into a serial killer? Is it a natural born serial killer, or he becomes it? So I'm fascinated. And for a while, I was in the talks to make a movie about a serial killer, but without the murder scenes. It would have been more like an interrogation, more of a theatrical, like theater movie. But in the end, I didn't do it. Like when you have such a huge rock, like my father, I would be really foolish to try and compete with him.
Right.
It's so.
Or you might be underestimating yourself.
No, because I don't want to end up caged. Say the horror movie comes out really great, and then everybody wants me to do only horror movies. So I prefer to remain in the fringes of maverick cinema. Maybe that's how you can label my movies in maverick cinema. In the fringes and without going into a straight genre.
Okay, okay, I get it.
Excellent. شما میتونی سوال 9 رو بپرسی سوال جان. حتی میخوایی نمیدونم. فهمید فقط خود دیگه. برو.
شما در ژانرهای متنوعی بازی کردید خانم آرژنتو و بسیار از فیلم‌های پدرتون نقش قربانی رو ایفا کردید. اما در فیلم The Hurt is deceitful above all things نقشی رو ایفا میکنید که دیگر یک دختر هراسان ترسیده قربانی نیست، فقط این بار دست به عمل میزنه و کاری که میکنه اینی که داره مقابله به مثل میکنه با اطرافیانش، با اینکه در قربانی اجتماع هست. میخواستم بپرسم بازی در کدوم یکی از این دو سو برای شما، برای شخص آزی آرژنتو سخت‌تر هست؟
You have played in films with various genres. In many of your father's films, you have played the roles of victims, in a sense. However, in the film, The Heart is Deceitful Above All Things, you play a character who's no longer like a frightened and confused girl, but who's actually more of an active character as opposed to a passive one, even though she's still a victim, in a way. I'm wondering which type of character you find more difficult to play.
When they're difficult, it means there is a challenge. So I'm always up for that because it means I need to push myself and I need to think and I need to do my homework. And I like to do that. I don't like something easy. What I find really difficult, and I've done very few, is comedy. Like I've made a few comedies and I really don't have the comic tempo, and so I that to me is like I don't know, like the most it's a mystery, and I don't have it. So when I played it, I was really uncomfortable, and I know it's not for me. I don't have those qualities, but I like. To play the victim or the monster, like in The Heart is Deceitful, as long as, there's stuff for me in the character to think about their past, why they're like this, what has happened in their life, what do they listen to, what kind of music, what is their thought process, all the stuff that an actor does at home, and the homework, and then you bring to the set and give life to a character.
خب الان شما سوالای چیز فقط شما داری ضبط میکنی دیگه؟
بله.
بسیار عالی. سوالای چیز تموم شد، سوال رپید فایر رو بپرسم دیگه.
آره شما رپید فایر رو بپرسید.
درست. Okay, great. So we can just end with a couple of rapid fire questions. The first one is, what do you look for in a good script? And what do you think makes a good script? In other words.
Well, what I look for is a good script. And what makes a good script is, first of all, most of the scripts are not really beautifully written. And when you find one that is also a kind of literature, that makes a beautiful script for me. So it's something that keeps you, like reading a book, and that's very rare to find. And it's when, it's like, for me, I read a lot. I read a lot more movies than I watch. I mean, books. That's a Freudian slip. I read
Right.
movies, and the reason why is that when I read a book, I can see movies. I see the characters going through these actions. I see their faces, their clothes, and it's a movie I can make in my mind. And when I read a script, when I can see it, then it means it's a good script for me. Especially when, and also that's like I said of my movies, it's if it's a movie I've never seen before, then it makes me want to play in it, and especially if it's a character I've never played before. I've played many times and over sexualized since like my 20s. After one movie, I became like this in movies. I was asked after I did a movie where I was naked. Then everybody started asking me to be naked in movies because they're like people in cinema don't have lots of fantasy, so they're like, oh, we need somebody naked. Oh, let's call Argento. She's easy. She can do this. And the prostitute, like many times. I'm like, is this how you see me? And I mean, I'm not offended. It means I have freedom, especially when I was young. Now, I'm almost 46. I'm not very much at ease with this. But so to play the same character over and over again, you can do like a Bach, the variations on the same theme, but there's so many variations you can do on the theme. And I still have a healthy ambition as an actor to work in movies that can enrich me. And mostly I find that when I work with directors who are open to improvisation, who are not stuck with the lines in the script, is where I have the most fun. Because that's my style of filmmaking too. I'm not somebody who like I rewrite the script, the lines as I go along with the actors.
Gotcha. Okay, the next question is, if you weren't in the film industry at all, what do you think you would be doing instead?
Um, I also do music, but that I already do. I think I would be a good teacher. I would be a good teacher of films, of
Right.
acting, and also with plants. I'm very good with plants. I would be a very good gardener.
Great. Okay. Among all the roles that you've played in various films, which one do you think you didn't do as good of a job as you initially hoped?
I never watch, rarely watch the movies I make as an actress, unless
Oh,
it's a
really?
movie I feel really invested in, and there's very few. So I, unfortunately, my bad, I've made many movies that I didn't love, just like I told you before,
Right.
because I needed to work. I needed, to pay the rent. I need to bring food to my kids. So there's many movies that not much was required from me, so I didn't do much. And that's why, like, since 2013, I pretty much stopped acting, and I just started again with a new outlook and a new willingness to do really good at the best that I can. So there are many movies that I could have made be better, but after working, with some great directors and feeling what it could be, like Abel Ferrara, Tony Gatliff, Peter Del Monte, my father. My standards were very high. So then, when I would do a movie that was not, the director was not as inspired, so to speak, then I'm not inspired, and I go and do my job, and I give, not much is required from me, and I do the minimum, and then you go home, you have this kind of bitter taste in your mouth, and I don't want to do that anymore. That's why now that I started acting again, things are coming my way, but I'm being very selective of what to do as an actress. I want to do great.
Gotcha. Okay, so what is a movie that you recently watched that really captivated you and that you really liked?
My God, I saw last night the new movie by Gaspar Noé that still has to be released with my father, who's the lead role. My father, who's almost 81 years old, was never acted in movies except for small parts for Friends. He's the lead role in this incredible movie, heartbreaking movie, really sentimental, but like really heartbreaking. Just like you cry a lot in this movie, and I can't give out because it's premiering this Friday, so it hasn't been reviewed or seen by anyone yet. But the style of filmmaking, the way, I mean, the movie is like 2 hours 30, and like it flies by, even though not much happens because of great acting, and it's all improvised, the movie, but you don't see it because it's so fluid. And the style of filmmaking, it's a movie I've never seen before. The way it's shot, the way it's acted, the story itself. And so I was so happy because I was so happy. Gaspar is my best friend. And I have convinced my father to act in this movie. He didn't want to do it. And I was like, look, it's going to be really good for you because now my father is shooting his new movie, which I'm producing. And he hadn't been on the set for a while. And I knew that being on a film set would have put him back into the groove, you know, and to be beneficial for him and feel good about himself. And I mean, the job that he does, like, it's so mesmerizing. It's like, you know, like Oscar-winning performance. It's out of this world. So I hadn't seen a movie that captivated me so much in a long time.
Amazing. Okay, next up is I don't know if you watch TV shows as well, but if you do, what's your favorite TV show of all time?
God, I don't want, I mean, with my son, because he loves them, we watch some of this Netflix stuff. I guess when Twin Peaks came out, I was 14. It was the first series like this, and it was very meaningful to me. And with my school friends, you know, it was a certain day of the week that it was showing, and we would meet at my apartment. We would drink the coffee with the donut, like in the movie. So it was a whole ritual. So I think for me, it was a very formative series, that Twin Peaks. I haven't watched the sequel. I tried to watch it, but I was not thrilled as I was with the original.
Right. As an actress, do you have to be able to personally relate to a character in order to play them, or is playing characters whose personalities are even far different from yours also interesting to you?
Yes, I mean, especially if they're very different from me, and I have to find like the mother in The Heart is Deceitful. I mean, this is the worst person on earth, right? She's the worst mother that ever lived. But I had to find a way to love her in order to play her, in order to have mercy on her, to forgive her, and for her to be, you know, I had to play her, and I couldn't hate her. So I had to find a way to love her, to bring her to the light, her dark soul. You know, with love, I managed to bring her to the light. So I think, like, even with the worst character, you have to love them, because I think that even the darkest people, like I said, like there's always, they have the possibility to go to the light. So I have to imagine the light inside of them.
In the world of acting, who's been your greatest inspiration?
You know, I'm not a huge actor follower. I love, you know, actors in certain movies. To me, it's the movie that makes the actor. It's not like this actor, I love this actor, every movie he makes. No. I love this movie, and there's this great actor. So an actor is kind of like an instrument, you know, and the actor is the director of the orchestra. and and then some actors are the solo players, but there's a work of many people. It's many people making this happen, and it's not because we see close up on the big screen, that because I've been there and I think I'm like they're dominating the world, but actually I wouldn't be there if the director wouldn't have chosen me, if the DOP with the electrician didn't put the right light. So I tend to follow more the work of directors than actors.
Mhm.
And there's a line I remember that I don't know if you ever saw the documentary Heart of Darkness, shot by the wife of Coppola during the shooting of Apocalypse Now. And there's a moment that she's filming Coppola on the phone, and he says something I don't remember exactly. He says something. If it's not Marlon Brando, it's Al Pacino. If it's not Al Pacino, it's Robert De Niro. What matters is the movie. Like if you believe
Yeah.
that this actor can play this role, this actor can play this role, but an actor is exchangeable. What you cannot exchange is the director and his vision.
Thank you.
An actor is a
Sorry, I couldn't.
Okay, so
What did you say, Emil?
I said an actor then is basically a tool.
Yes, or an instrument, something about. But if you want to think the more, because we're still in the art business, so I like to say an instrument that can play a great melody, but also tell you something. If you have a terrible violinist playing the greatest Stradivari, then the melody is not going to be fantastic. So that's why you also, you have to be the best instrument, but you also need somebody who's as great as you to play. Otherwise, you're going to suck.
Yeah, got it. Just two more. One is who's a director that you've never worked with but you would love to?
Again, I find it there's this I don't know, like, and I don't I've observed so many the ego of so many actors that really frighten me and embarrass me, so I try to remain humble and not ambitious in that sense. That said, well, I would like to work more with some of the directors I already worked with, because I know that it's great and I love to build relationships. And so I would love to work again with Abel Ferrara, with Tony Gatliff, with Olivia Sayas, because it's like, that our relationship and our work ethics can only grow after years of working again, and we've changed as people, and what can we bring in a new script. I had the directors that I admire, like Gaspar, even though he's my best friend, is one of my favorite directors, or I love Harmony Korine, but I, at the same time, I don't have the dream of working with them. I prefer to be the spectator, to sit and watch their movies.
I understand. Okay. And the last one is, what is the best piece of advice you could give to an aspiring actress and filmmaker, or filmmaker?
I think to both the same thing. Watch as many movies as you can from the past, from the beginning, from Zigaberto, the silent movies. Watch the history of cinema developing. Read many books, old books, new books, theater, as many books as possible, and go to museums and watch art. The way they're framed, the painting is framed, where is the light coming from, the costumes, the movements, and listen to music, because the music is going to give you the rhythm of your character and the rhythm of your movie. So I think the best thing to do is really to know as much as you can. So you more than knowing what you can do, at least you know what you don't want to do, both as actor and director. That's the most important.
Great. Thank you so much. سوید جان شما میتونی الان قسمت آخر رو میخوای بگی؟
بله من با اجازه تو قسمت آخر رو میگم خدمت خانم آرژنتو و شما هم
بگو که
با حس خودم ترجمه کن بزنم. مرسی. خانم آرژنتو، من در ایمیلی که برای بپ مارزانو فرستادم در مورد یک پیشنهاد کاری صحبت کردم. من از کودکی به طور جدی سینما رو پیگیری کردم و از 16 سالگی نزد مهمترین فیلمسازان سینمایی ایران آموزش فیلمنامه‌نویسی و کارگردانی. در طول این سال‌ها همیشه فیلم دیدم، تئوری فیلم خوندم و حتی 2 تا کتاب هم در همین زمینه چاپ کردم. امسال به این نتیجه رسیدم که اون زمانی که همیشه منتظرش بودم فرا رسید. من میخوام یه فیلم بسازم و اما نه هر فیلمی، چون خیلی براش صبر کردم تا بهترینم رو ارائه بدم. من کاملا مستقل و بدون بودجه گرفتن از دولت میخوام که این اتفاق بیفته. در فیلم من یک زن سرکش اروپایی وجود داره که کل اتفاقات رو تقریبا رقم میزنه، اما فقط از
ترجمه کنم تا اینجا بعد
موبایل. بله آره مرسی. و اصلا کلش رو دارم برید میزنم، همشو بگو براشون.
بله. Lastly, I'd like to mention that in my conversation with Mr. Marzano via email, I also talked about a potential job offer, and I'm currently in the process of preparing the proposal for it, which I'm going to send to Mr. Marzano in a few weeks. Personally, I've had the privilege of being taught and trained by some of the most prominent filmmakers in Iran, starting from the age of 16. During all these years, I've been deeply studying films and filmmaking and the industry in general. I've also published several books on the subject. Earlier this year, I decided that the time has come for me to actually start making a feature film. But it's not going to be a junior project or something like that. I've waited for a long time in order to gain the requisite knowledge and skills necessary to produce a solid piece of work. The film is going to be totally independent. It isn't backed by government or anything like that. We have a character in the movie who's a European woman, and she only appears in the movie through video calls. So like other characters call her, and it's like that. To give you some idea, the film is a forest horror film. Furthermore, due to the nature of the character in the movie, the rules of compulsory veiling for women in movies in Iran won't apply there. So there's no problem in that regard. And someone of your caliber appearing in the film would certainly help it to be taken very seriously. And in general, I believe it has the potential to become a unique and remarkable movie in the history of cinema in Iran. Needless to say, I would definitely clear up any concerns or questions you might have about the project, but I just want to know whether you would even consider participating in such a project if you find the script to be appealing and interesting enough.
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to read it when you have it, and I'm actually working on an idea with Abel Ferrara about a movie where there's lots of Zoom calls because of the pandemic. So it's an idea that fascinates me. It's a really good trick also to have me there, and sure, bring it on. I'll be away in August, so I won't be able to read anything in August, but in September, if you have something ready, send it over to Beppe, and I'll give you my honest opinion, and I hope to love it and to be in it. No problem.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you very much. That was great. It's been a pleasure talking with you, Mrs. Argento. Thank you again for accepting the interview and for sharing your expertise and experience in the world of movies. This has been extremely valuable. We also greatly appreciate your time, and have a great day. Thank you so much. And we'll also prepare the proposal for that movie and send it to Mr. Marzano.
Keep me posted also on the interview when it comes out.
Thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye. همیرسن جون هستی؟ نه همیرسن جون نیست، بذار قطعش کنیم.